America is also a good opportunity, a good prospect. Now, it is symbolic that the so-called date-changing line that goes on the border between Russia and the United States, a line where you can step from today into tomorrow. It is really symbolic. So I'd like to thank President Trump for the work that we've had today, for the friendly tone of conversation, for the goal-oriented approach, results-oriented approach. We can see clearly what the United States wants to achieve. President Trump certainly sincerely cares for the future of his country. At the same time, he understands that Russia has its own national interests. I'm sure that today's agreements will help us restart pragmatic relations between Russia and the United States and help us start on the path towards resolution in Ukraine. And also one more thing, in 2022, during my final contacts with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American counterpart, President Biden, that we needn't move towards a situation which could lead to a military confrontation. I told him before that that would be a critical mistake. And now President Trump, when he says that if he were president, there would be no war. And I personally believe that is the case. There would be no war had President Trump been president at that time. Because myself and President Trump have had very good trust-based relations, and I'm confident that if we had stayed on that path, we could move as quickly as possible to a resolution of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound, and I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Radcliffe, thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here. And I think, you know, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time. And we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all, but we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax, but what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, whose faces, who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed. And President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much. And we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
President, what still needs to be done? Mr. President, what still needs to be done?
Wow, what a press conference that was after this historic meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. Just to give you a quick rundown of the general.
Hello, Garland here. So, yeah, I just wanted to, I saw that on and I felt like, hey, you know, our community, we need to look at that. We need to see that. And, you know, what I took from that was, here's what I took from that for starters, we don't know. They left amicably. It seemed like they had a meeting, certainly based on what Trump said. You know, various people who were involved were, you know, were involved, the various people they brought. He mentioned businessmen, so I'm sure they talked about business. Now, someone in the chat put nothing has changed. Exactly. I don't think, but at least from the Russians' perspective, and reading what they wrote, I don't think the Russians came in here thinking, okay, we're going to leave here with some big changes. I think the Russians came in here really with two plans. I think it was number one, and I read this in Russian media, and it was the Russians planned to put their case on the table. Remember something, people forget this because of the propaganda. Vladimir Putin is a lawyer. He wanted to make his opening arguments with Trump. He knows that the neocons have Trump's ear. He knows that Kellogg and people around him, and they're telling him the Russians are losing 2 million people a day. The Russians, everything's crashing, blah, 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 right? Somebody else, a great comment here. Great comment. And this is realism. Icebreaker. That's exactly what it is. Now, I'm saying this to the Russians. It was, let's get out here. Let's make our case to Trump. I don't think the Russians are naive. I don't think they think somehow the United States is going to turn around and stop trying to do them dirty and wake up tomorrow and be their friend. They're not naive people. They're very Putin and his team are brilliant people. But I think you had a couple of things. Number one, we're going to lay it on the line. Donald Trump and everybody in the room, this is our issue. This is what we want. This is what we require. This is what we're angry about. This is the direction we need to go if we're going to resolve this thing. It's up to you, but this is what we need to do. So they did that. I think somebody else said it was a photo session. It was that too. It was getting some press, particularly in the West and a lot of places in the world, who say, you know, get a lot of negative press about the Russians. The Russians are evil. The Russians are this. The Russians are that. I think they wanted to come out as professionals and say we're professionals and we're ready to come in and sit down at the table and we're ready to talk. And we will do what we need to do militarily, but we're reasonable people who are willing to have diplomatic relations with the U.S. So I think that they were successful. I think the Russians want bilateral meetings with the U.S. where they continue to talk. The nuclear treaties all fall apart. The last of them go away in the 2026. I think the Russians wanted to begin some kind of a conversation to hopefully reinvigorate the nuclear treaty process and to get started on that again. So I think that from the Russians' perspective, they had no delusions that something good, bad, or good was going to happen. I think they felt like we win if we have this meeting. And I don't mean win over the US as a competition. We win, and I mean is we're going to get a positive effect out of this. We get to say what we got to say. We get to lay our cards on the table. We get to sit in front of Trump, where all of these other people may say everything in the world. We get to actually sit in front of him now. We get to hear. We've heard Trump wants to do business. We want to hear what he's saying. Trump, oh, well, Trump, I want to do business. I want business with the Russians. I think the Russians are saying, we hear all of this stuff, but give us some specifics. If it's true, not that they're going to take them, but they want to hear the specifics, and they got some specifics. So I think the fact that the Russians got specifics, I think the fact that the Russians got their issues on the table, the world was looking at this. Right now, the Russians have allies. They've got India. They got China. They got the global South. And I think they wanted to, they're very, very cognizant of the need for diplomacy amongst their allies and to support their relationship with their allies. And I think they wanted to see their allies, I think they wanted their allies to see them in a professional manner, trying to work towards peace, even if they may feel that it ain't necessary. I also think the Russians know, look, we're in a strong position on the battlefield, and it's going to get better. And we need to have an open dialogue now, more so than ever. You know, one of the things that I talked about with Dr. Jim Kavanaugh, we talked about that moment of danger. The moment comes when the Russians have won, and it's obvious. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. It's getting close to being, it's obvious now, but where Ukraine starts to collapse, and of course the crazies, the chihuahuas in Europe start saying, we've got to act now, we've got to attack the Russians, Trump, we've got to get in the war, it's now or never, right? I think the Russians want to set the table so that when that moment of truth comes, they'll already have an open dialogue with the Americans. They'll have an open dialogue. They've talked about that. They've discussed that. They've got the Americans prepared. They've got the table prepared so that when that happens, they'll be able to have a discussion about the realities of what's there, and that they'll already have opened a dialogue for negotiations. The negotiation will be for an unconditional surrender, but there'll be a dialogue available for negotiation. So I think that this was a positive thing. I think that the Russians, and I mean, that was just a good look. Now, Trump represents the empire, and he doesn't have the authority that people think he does. And you know what the neocons and the Europeans are doing. But it was a good look for me. It was a good look for the world. It was a good look for the allies of Russia to see, in the global South, to see Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and what did the sign say behind them? Pursuing peace. I think also from the perspective of, let's face it, the Democrats are kind of done. The Democrats are like, oh, Putin, no, we've got to go to war and nuke everybody. You know, they're completely mindless. You know, they're like, hey, let's go beat up a cop with a sub. You know what I mean? I mean, how, we're going to go from there. You know what I'm saying? How do you reason with somebody who's like attacking people with subs? I mean, I'm sure it was a vegan sub, no doubt, probably made with sustainable paper, you know, with what was it? It probably wasn't even paper. It was, you know, some kind of a sustainable product from hemp or something that was that the sub was wrapped in. But how you going to negotiate with people who are like, we got to fight Putin? I guess somebody wanted to throw a sub at him. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, the element in the United States that wants peace, be they Democrat, Republican, or independent, I think got a shot in the arm from this to see pursuing peace, to hear something. It may have been a fake, and the U.S. empire is what it is, and it's still a war machine, and it's committing a genocide, and it's a terrible, diabolical machine. I will not die, and they're going to continue continuity of policy, as Brian Berletic says, and they're going to keep up their devious and diabolical deeds. All true. Not going to dispute that with anybody. But I do think that this was something good that I feel good about, if nothing else. Yeah, maybe it did nothing, but I get to feel good for a day. Is there anything wrong with that? Can't Garland just feel good for a day? Can't you just, do you have to hate me? Does Garland not to get a few hours to say I feel good before the nukes fall? Just give me my last few hours. Can I go, wow, that felt good. Oh my God, we're all dead. Give me a break here. Give me a break. So let's, I don't know, crack open a cold one. A good St. Pauli Girl or Heineken or maybe Budweiser, whatever be your favorite. Open a cold one up and swing it down, smile a little bit, and say, I think that was a good thing. I think that was a good thing. I think what was interesting is at the end, when Trump said, well, we're going to meet again soon, and Putin said, maybe in Moscow, and Trump said, well, it was interesting. He says, oh, I'm going to get a lot of heat for that. He knows that when if he says he's going to Moscow, that the neocons like, oh my God, no, you can't go to Moscow, right? That may be why Trump will go. You know what I mean? He loves, you know what? Here's the thing about this. This was El Primo Trump. Trump loves the lights. He loves the cameras. He loves everybody saying Trump. He wants it on those words on everybody's mouth. So from Trump's perspective, he got all the attention. He's absolutely thrilled, which means that maybe he'll do it again. But again, like I said, you know, the U.S. is a warmongering empire and they're up to no good. But maybe this will give us a couple more days of you know, existence. Who the hell knows, to be honest with you. But at any rate, so that's it. I suspect over the next few days, we'll be hearing some of the things that were said there. Excuse me, we'll be hearing rumors. We'll be hearing all kinds of stuff. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But me, for one day, I'm going to smile for one day. That's all I'm going to do. And then I'll go back to being pissed over the genocide and all the other stuff. And, you know, then we can get back to the U.S. empire doing its evil deeds, still trying to surround Russia and take them out, and China and Iran and all the other things. But just for a little while, I'm going to smile. Thanks a lot, everybody. I share this on all your social media platforms if you can afford it, be it Patreon, follow me on Telegram and all that stuff. If you can afford it, whether it's Patreon, buy me a coffee, or PayPal or something, it's certainly appreciated. If you do that, if you can contribute to the channel. But even if you can't, the most important thing you can do is share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. I'm out.